Our earliest manuscripts of our earliest gospel don't say anything about a resurrected Jesus appearing to anyone. Hey everybody, I'm Dan McClellan. I'm a scholar of the Bible and religion, and the fit for this video is the Marvel universe. And our earliest manuscripts of the Gospel of Mark have the Gospel ending at Mark 16:8. And in verses 5 through 7, we have Mary Magdalene and the other women showing up at the tomb, and it's empty, and there's a young man sitting on the right side who says, "You're looking for Jesus of Nazareth, and he's not here. He has risen. This is where they laid him. Now, go and tell his disciples and Peter that he's going before you to Galilee, where he'll meet you just like he said." And then in verse 8, it says the women ran from the tomb, and they didn't say anything to anyone because they were afraid. That's the end of the gospel in our earliest manuscripts, and that has become known as the short ending of Mark. Verses 9 through 20 were added afterwards, and that's where we get the stories of the resurrected Jesus appearing to people. And some manuscripts have what scholars call the intermediate ending, and that's a passage added at the end of verse 8 that says, "They went and quickly told the people around Peter, and then Jesus himself, through them, spread the gospel." And so most scholars think that the Gospel of Mark probably ends on this dramatic note with the women running terrified from the tomb. But that probably wasn't a satisfactory ending for some of the audiences of this original gospel. And so people began to add these stories about the post-resurrection appearances to give us what we now have as the long ending of Mark.
So let me give you the critical thinking of what my man Dan just said. When you think about this critically and think about how things were done, this is where you should land. Mark being the oldest gospel that we have found on record is also the gospel that Matthew, that Luke, that John, that all the writings of Paul are based on. The consensus is that those writers had Mark and used Mark as a template to be able to write Matthew, Luke, and John and any other gospel thereafter. Now, since the Gospel of Mark did not have an ending that satisfied the people and did not talk about any eyewitnesses, any people seeing Jesus, that the women were afraid and didn't tell anyone, which would indicate that the rest of the eyewitnessing accounts are fabricated, that they're created, that they're not real, that Paul's account of talking to somebody else who said that they heard that 500 people saw Jesus is a fabrication, because Mark spoke nothing of anyone seeing Jesus and that the women were actually afraid and didn't tell anyone. But after you add this information to Mark, then the other writers can add their eyewitnessing accounts, which means that no eyewitness wrote anything, that no one saw your Jesus rise. And the eyewitness accounts of people seeing Jesus after he died is one of the big things that Christians hang their hat on. Now, many Christians are going to come onto this post and they're going to say the only thing matters is that he rose. But since no one saw it, then you have no proof that he actually rose. You just have the eyewitness account, the so-called eyewitness account of a couple of women. And according to your Bible, if only women are proclaiming something and there's no man to back up what they're saying, then those accounts are not valid. So this is why when they rewrote Mark, added to Mark, they said that he went and told Peter, and then Peter and them came to verify, because they need a male's account in order to say it is true, because women accounts are not valid according to your Bible. Don't believe me? Go look it up. Go look it up and tell me that I'm wrong. So effectively, critically thinking, since man is able to just add to your Bible, and your Bible said no man can add or take away from it, but we can clearly demonstrate that man has added to it, then that invalidates your Bible, because man has written the entire thing based on how they can get the people to believe it, based on how they can control the people. When you look at and I have to look at it again, I haven't looked at it in a long time, but the Sinaiticus and the Valentinus, you see the same thing. Mark just ended, or then they just added to it. And like I said, if man can add to it, it ain't the word of your God. That's just them needing to make the story fit, make the story work for those people. So always remember, you have to free yourself to be yourself, because your greatness is non-negotiable. Good journey, good vibration.